Hello, everyone. So great to see all of you here. It's a pleasure to have this session with you and to listen to you. This is the first of the 3 Stocktaking sessions on learning methodologies. The first one, today's session, will be specifically about peer learning. So the idea here is to listen to you on peer learning methodologies and the impact of peer learning in local public policies, the challenges. And so I will give you a little bit some information on the session. We have a big challenge because we want to listen to all of you, and we had until yesterday 230 registered participants. So I will ask you to use a lot the chat to give your insights on the questions that we are going to make, and so this way we can also have after the session all the inputs that you wrote in the chat. And just to say that we have interpretation for English, French, and Spanish. So below on the right, you can choose your channel. And that's a little bit it. We will begin with Sarah telling us a little bit about the idea of these stock-taking sessions, and more specifically on peer learning. And then we will listen to you first on a Mentimeter consultation, and then we will go to the open debates and about the methodologies, the impacts, and the way to Daejeon. So Sarah, we are with you. Thank you very much for the presence. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you very much, Fernando, for the introduction, and thanks to so many of you. I know almost all the faces here. It's so nice that we can say we have really a learning forum with you. So maybe just to remind, what is a learning forum and why do we have a learning forum? So this is a result of many, many years of work, particularly on peer learning, which we have seen necessary in an association like UCLG. So we often represent governments, we give the policy, we localize, but we also see more and more the need in association to invest in learning, to also mobilize cities to invest in their own learning. And that is why the learning forum is important. So this is a learning forum is actually a gathering of those who are actively believing on the importance of learning in the institutions, and how they do this, or how you do this, and why we do this, we will share in the forum. So this is an open space, a continuous space, and as Fernando was just saying, we have peer learning now today to look at, but we also have e-learning and what was the other? So e-learning.
To be localizing
the SDG
21st of June, and
so there are more opportunities to look at this together. So I would first say we do this 3 sessions on our way to Daejeon, where we hope to come up with more strength, more conclusion, and also some activities. So we also will be very happy to hear from you. What do you think to do in Daejeon? Sessions, of course, are now we are almost there to, if you want to apply, you have 10 hours left, because our deadline is very close to propose sessions. But also, if you are going, if you want to do this, of course, we are very happy to connect you to those who do sessions, and so that we can have a really learning-rich Congress. So say this, I would like to go more into what peer learning is about. We have a very short video, which we would like to show you for this. And then we go a little bit into the detailed methodology that will guide our session today. Fernando?
Have you heard about the power of peer learning between cities? Peer learning refers to the two-way reciprocal learning between equals and is considered the most effective ways institutions learn. To organize a peer learning, the expectations need to be clear. Peers may want to learn from a comparable experience or reflect with others on their city's policies. The host of a peer learning event and the facilitators play a critical role. The host is a city or organization providing the venue and context for discussions. They prepare, present, and share their experience, including through field visits and engaging local actors. The facilitator role can be assumed by local government associations, networks, or partners. They help mobilize participants, create opportunities for meaningful exchange, and nurture ongoing advocacy processes. Participants in a peer learning event also play a critical role, contributing actively to discussions. It is important to mix formal and informal learning opportunities to allow for individual exchanges and follow-up. Are you thinking about organizing a peer learning event? Keep this checklist in mind. Define a clear theme and sub-themes for peers to engage. Clarify concepts and assess needs. Explain any technical concept and use strong visuals. Train and brief speakers. A good practice presentation should focus on key lessons, challenges, and transferability. Avoid cognitive overload. Limit lectures and presentations to 10 to 15 minutes or less. Connect to participants with practical expertise. Encourage participants to share their knowledge and treat everyone as an expert. Use the power of storytelling. Remember to look into the whole policy cycle and the impact of the practices being discussed. Facilitators are essential to create an enabling environment for open and respectful discussions among peers. Bridge language gaps among participants coming from different technical and regional backgrounds. Use edutainment and gamification. The more involved, the faster and easier they learn. Collect feedback and report it. Peer learning notes are essential to make the knowledge accessible and transferable. Peer learnings help UCLG members and partners engage in effective and dynamic exchanges and policy-making processes. They also help to gather practices and connect them to global narratives, making municipal work visible. Want to know more about peer learning? Visit uclg.learning.org.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a little bit the introduction. And as you can see, this video is inspired of a high number of peer learnings we did on site. But of course, we are now in a new era, we could say, or this peer learning on site have been enriched with peer learnings virtually. So we want, of course, also to address this issue. And I would like to highlight 4 steps that will also now guide further our discussion and what we would like to know from you. So the first step is a mobilization. So if we mobilize for a peer learning, we need to very carefully look into which are our participants. If I'm a network, how do I select? For example, we had just last week learning in MEVA with a very careful selection of participants. And so is if you want a topic, you of course want people to speak on the topic. So as more people feel equal, as more effective they will learn from each other. Also inside the city, so the mobilization, if I'm, for example, in Buenos Aires and I would like to do a learning on resilience, as it has been the case, of course, who do I mobilize? Who do I organize my city and how do I transmit the ownership of the city? So this includes leaders, political leaders, technical leaders, and of course the staff that is also quite interested to learn. The second step is the methodology. So which methodology are you using? As in the video, of course, we have tested successfully a lot of gamification, a lot of interactivity. But of course, the methodology is about the knowledge, about the people. So there is a lot we would like to learn from you. The methodology you have been using, you have been fine-tuning, you have been approving. So as, for example, we could observe with the Guangzhou Award. The third step is knowledge management. So in the peer learning for us at UCLG, and I'm happy I see here now our Secretary General with us, the peer learnings are both. They are important for our partners to contact cities, but they also important for our cities to get each other's experience and learn from each other. And what happens with this learning? What happens with this evidence we create? So these are what we would call practices. And there are several observatories we have in-house, like culture, the OEDP, but we also are very, very proud that the youth platform of Metropolis is so continuously investing in the practices. And how are these practices used in academia and also in our own work for the policy and for the research? And the last point is the impact, which is, of course, the most important element we do. In the end, we are doing the learning with a lot of practitioners, but behind this are the communities that need better services, that need more attention. And this impact we need to see. And we need, of course, we cannot necessarily automatically align a peer learning to an immediate impact, because sometimes this would be overwhelming the expectations, but there is always impact in a better practitioner, in a better service provider, in a municipality that can actively grab knowledge from others, and of course with this improves the services. So these are the 4 steps, and I would leave it here because now it is on you to let us know a little bit your stories, and that's why we have prepared a Mentimeter exercise. Over to Fernando.
Thank you, Sarah. I will share the screen here. I don't know if Emilio wants to comment on something before, or we can pass to the Mentimeter.
Go to the Mentimeter and happy to say a few words later.
Great, thank you. So we ask you to go to menti.com to use your phone or your computer, and go to menti.com and use the code 7000108550. So menti.com and use the code 70010850. We have already 3 persons there. 4. Please go there whenever you want, Sarah.
Let's wait for some answers. Maybe you read the question, Fernando.
Great. So considering the city, as Sarah said, a laboratory of experiences and policies, how do you engage the city system locally and the network globally? Making open calls to all city officials or network members, asking the mayor or the leader to delegate focal points, reach out academia or local stakeholders, or call partners of the network to suggest participants. So these are some of the options, but later we can also comment on possible other actions to engage city system, the local actors, and also the global partners and other networks and actors globally. Please use the chat also if you want to comment on something else. So yes, think it's well balanced there, but the partners and the leaders are going with the most voted options. Maybe go to the second one. So how do you select topics for your peer learning? If problem-based or good practices based? This is another interesting thing to think about. The problem-based is winning until now. Yes. Interesting. We can go to the next one about making the content usable. That thing that Sarah also commented on the impacts, right, of the learning on the local public policies. What do you do with the contents provided by the peers? How to draw policy conclusion, document the practices, contextualize the exchange for the network, or record practices. Interesting to document and to use for the exchange with a network of peers or partners or within different networks. I think we have one more about also what is the role of associations and city networks in peer learning, about the importance of partnerships and working in networks. Gather participants, service to the members, follow up, prepare technical support. Yeah. Gather participants and service to the members, also always a important space for peer learning, to know practices, problems, solutions. Yeah. And I believe it's the last one. This is an open question about the monitoring impact. What kind of impact are feasible from peer learning? So how to, this question that could, for you to think about the importance of monitoring and how we can follow the learning and how this can impact on local public policies. So staff performance, shortcut solutions, knowledge advancement, inspiration for action mentoring city to city, bonds between peers and the creation of platforms or projects that allow to continue with the learning, building capacities, improved policy implementation. Yeah. Also depends on the nature of peer-to-peer learning and the problem addressed, improve refresher meeting, improve the quality of practice. We need first to document, involve all actors, share the knowledge, lifelong learning, healthier partnerships, and better understanding of the ways in which to solve difficult public policy problems. Awareness on ongoing challenges and trends, identification of involved stakeholders, strengthening, facilitate the role of municipality, national and global advocacy. Yeah. Improved public policies. We want to hear after how we can guarantee that, how we can improve from the peer learning. What's the way? What are the methodologies? and how do you structure your peer learning to guarantee this impact. Have a roadmap with practical recommendations, give visibility to best practices and reward them. Also technical and political mobilization, share experiences, policy improvement, very interesting. I think that's it. Well, you can continue on the Mentimeter or through the chat too. Thank you very much. Sarah, we are with you.
Yeah, maybe Emilia, if you would like to make a point here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. Well, a general comment on the exercise that we are doing, and then maybe relating it back to some of the feedback that we have seen in the Mentimeter. Apologies for being late. You know, the reason why we want to organize again a learning forum within our Congress is threefold, in fact. Because we want to ensure that our World Organization also consolidates the technical network that is attached to it. The World Organization is a political organization, obviously, but the political part of it, the cities that are members, and remember, people are not members, but the institutions that are members are made up of technical administrations and staffing, and they are a very important building block of what we do. Also, local government associations are extremely important for us. So we want to consolidate this technical aspect of the organization. The second reason is you have all been doing, this community has been doing training and capacity building and implementing projects for a very long time. Your expertise is undeniable, but what we would like to see is an evolution of this expertise together. So it's the collective effort, the collective learning, the long-term partnerships within learning, what we would like to promote, and we think that coming together from time to time to think about how we train, how we learn, how we develop our agendas is very critical, not only from a methodology perspective, and here comes the third pillar from my perspective, and it is the capacity of developing an agenda through learning, which is what differentiates the learning that is promoted by an organization like ours, which is membership based, and that is promoted by other organizations. So if we have the leadership of the World Organization defining priorities, we should also underpin that by developing agendas. And I think it's what it differentiates us from any other service provider that is doing learning. Is this added value of our network, the one that we would like to identify, and that would allow us to partners with professionals in learning and academia in a different way. I think to a certain extent we are managing to do this already. But I think it can be improved, and it is extremely important for us to ensure that our learning agenda is put to the service of the political agenda that we are trying to promote, and that we connect that political agenda also with our research agenda, with our decentralized cooperation agenda in the different parts of the network, and with our advocacy agenda. The learning should help us know how to do things, but it should also help us know how to tell things to others and draw lessons from that. And some of the questions that I was seeing around the Mentimeter, what is the difference between recording and documenting, etc., are around that. And I'm not going to go into the semantics of that. I think we have done a lot of recording and little on documenting. I think a film can actually be a very strong document, provided it takes into account many different components, which is not only something that happened, but something that provides context in the political agenda of the organization. So for me, this is the aim of the forum. I think the questions that you are going to be addressing today, but in following sessions, are going to be extremely important for us. But I would like you to focus also on how to enhance collective learning for the network. How would that look like? What do we need to do to ensure that? How do we ensure that our commitment is long-term? How do we maintain the community? And how do we ensure, I mean, we talk about impact because of course, we cannot deny that many of our donors are driven by that and still have a very strong project mentality. But I think for us, beyond the impact, which we need to know and understand, to materialize and to measure that, I agree. But I think we also need to learn to show the evolution of how our membership has evolved in their own agendas, how they have been inspired by what they have learned together, but also how their own realities have driven them to different solutions. I think if we manage to do this around methodologies, but also around renewed partnerships, then I think we will be building a very strong component of the future of our organization. Now that our organization and our movement is looking really literally into the future with the pact for the future that is going to be our strategic priorities, we need to ensure that we have a good structure, a soft structure of peer learning and materials that will support that policy agenda that we are promoting. So I think the whole organization has high expectations, and we are counting on this diverse community, our partners, our members, the local government associations, but also the cities that have been doing collective learning to help us achieve that. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and looking forward to hearing the outcome.
Thank you, Emilia, also for reminding us that we are really, with this is one more ship in our organization, which we all wrote to not only to Daejeon, but to really more collective efforts in the future. So I think from my point of view, I would prefer not to say much. I think the Mentimeter is interesting. For me, it was surprising, but you might explain later that, for example, problem-based is more strong than good practice-based. I'm surprised because I experience the contrary, but maybe you will tell us more. And also the role of networks, relatively little follow-up. But this all, I think, will come up in the discussion. So I would say, Fernando, over to you, and let's hear what all you have to tell us. Thanks so much.
Great, Sarah. Great, Emilia. So I ask you to consider all this introduction, and we'll go to the first round of dialogue here. And it's very difficult because we have a lot of interesting people with great experiences here, but I would suggest that we will try to combine the geographical and gender balance here. So I'm seeing a lot of you could start, but seeing Genevieve from Mile, Durban could start. I believe they have I don't know, just to provoke Genevieve a little bit about it. Can we begin with you, Genevieve? And I will ask you for all of you to think about on how we do this collective learning, but specifically on the first round on methodology of your peer learning. How do you structure your peer learning? This, I believe, would be great to share with all participants in this first round of debate about methodology of peer learning. I don't know, Genevieve, can you start?
Okay. So thanks for the opportunity, Fernando. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so from Mal, once we've done the concept notes and we've got the delegates, how do we move forward from there? We put together what we call a facilitation plan. And parts of the components of that facilitation plan is that we look at, if this is the program and this is the concept notes and this is what we want to deliver, what are the resources that we need to deliver this year? So we look at a resource plan on what materials are needed, what budget is needed, and the human resources that are needed. Are we going to have facilitators? Who's our facilitators going to be? Or do we need scribes? Do we need documenters? Is it going to be external or internal? We then also go on to look at the venue, because we believe that the venue setup is critical to a successful event. We look at the venue setup according to the program. So we break it down as to, okay, how many tables do we need? Are we going to have round tables or square tables? How many microphones do we need? Do we need translators? Do we need flip chart paper? Do we need wall space? Do we need a data projector? So we go into in-depth detail to have a successful event. Once we've looked at the venue, we then move on to look at the roles and responsibilities. So we say, if that's the human resources that we need, who's doing what and when, so that everybody's on board and there's not discrepancies during the event that, oh, I thought you were going to do it. No, but you're going to do it. So there's an exact roles and responsibilities plan, and everybody knows what's their roles and when they are to come in and in the event. We then go on to look at the facilitation methodology. So what methodology that's going to be suit the audience and suit the program that's we're delivering on. We have a facilitation methodology plan, whether we're going to use World Cafe, whether we're going to use Participlan. And then we also look at, so at the end of the event, how are we going to evaluate this event? We look at a workshop evaluation. What type of evaluation are we going to do? It's going to be online. Is it going to be, and the questions that we are going to ask. And that's exactly 3 minutes and 10 seconds, Fernando. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jen. Well, very interesting to know better your very well structured of peer learning. I'm seeing here Nicholas also. If you could, and I know that you have a lot to say also in this area, Nicholas. I don't know if you can also comment on something like this.
Sure. Thank you very much, Fernando, and greetings to all. We, together with the Guangzhou Award for Urban Innovation, has been ongoing now for 10 years. And the entire purpose of the award has been peer learning and city-to-city cooperation. So it's an award system that is not only designed for recognition of excellence, but it is designed from the very scratch to be a learning platform. Now, one of the issues we encountered over this decade or more has been that urban and regional governments tend to focus on what they do or what they have done. This is normal. They're accountable for outputs, they're accountable for services delivery. So basically, the mindset is one, what we have achieved, what we have done, how many kilometers of roads have we put in, how much more sewage have we collected, how much more garbage have we disposed of. But it's very difficult to learn from an output. It's very difficult to learn from a solution because basically not one size fits all. And but we know that you can learn from processes. So I think in our peer learning efforts, which span from very small peer learning events, seminars, thought leadership workshops, to major conferences involving hundreds of people, what we try to do is get urban and regional local authorities to focus on a few key questions. And those key questions are all process oriented. Right? And I think this is important because if you can go step by step through the process of how you solved the problem, how you overcame an obstacle, then I think other people can be much easier inspired by that, can learn much more readily from it. So the key questions we always ask are, what worked well and why? What didn't work well and why not? What obstacles, challenges did you encounter? Which ones were overcome and how, and which ones still remain? And I think this is very important for other local authorities to be able to identify with the story that is being told. And perhaps the last and most important question that we ask is, what would you change or what would you do differently if you could start again? Because that is when the real lessons learned come out. You know, what would I do differently if I had the chance to start over again? And so that's basically the framework we have developed. Of course, the facilitation methods, the way you structure this, depending on the size and the audience, is also very important. And there we use different adult learning and communication methodologies and technologies, etc., including simulation, including Crawford slip techniques, etc. So that very importantly, I think, is that you have to set the tone for the learning environment to take place. And that needs a certain number of, how would I say, basically ice-breaking methods that you can use. Get people to really begin to dialogue. I think Genevieve said you have to even pay attention to the physical space in which you're doing the peer learning. I think that's also very important. With smaller groups, we prefer to have 6 or 8 people around a rectangular table and the tables in a fan shape. So basically, every time you do a presentation, small groups can start interacting, start commenting, etc., etc. But we found that ice-breaking is also very important to get people into the mood of exchange, getting them into a mode of being able to exchange freely with one another without feeling any peer pressures or embarrassment to speak in public. So that's basically our experience. As I said, we do this on a small scale in seminars, workshops, but we also do it for an entire conference.
Great, Nicholas. Wow, a lot of interesting things for us to think. And I'm seeing the chat here also very interesting too. Julia and Sanjaya are also commenting. Please do continue on that. I'm seeing here that we have Connective Cities. Fatima is here, and would also ask her, and please prepare yourselves, everyone, if you can also contribute. I'm just provoking here, Fatna, if you can also share the experience of on how do you prepare the peer learning session, as Nicholas and Genevieve also mentioned. Please, Fatima, would be great if you can comment on that too.
Absolutely, thank you very much. As I'm not sure who's familiar with the Connective Cities, I'll just give a very brief introduction of who we are and what we do. So basically, it's a joint venture between the GIZ, the Association of German Cities, and Engagement Global with its service agency, Communities in One World, so 3 German organizations. were mandated by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. So we are mandated by the German government to conduct a purely exchange program addressing municipal practitioners in Germany and around the world, mostly in the global south. So I heard a few points that are similar to our approach. So basically our program, our project is purely focusing on exchange amongst urban practitioners, addressing challenges and showcasing good practices. So the point of accessibility is also a very important point, so that we encourage, mobilize, support municipal representatives and other relevant stakeholders in how to showcase their good practices. We conduct several formats. What I wanted to mention here is specifically the transition between the on-site formats to the virtual formats. So as everyone experienced the last 2 years with a lot of restrictions, so we were also forced to rethink, redefine our options or our offers to our beneficiaries. So we shifted all of our services to online formats. And we created a virtual community of practice where we conducted several sessions, workshops, learning processes to address current challenges. So I thought that the point from Sarah was interesting, that you expected the good practices to be the starting point of the peer learning. I think in our experience with Connective Cities, this is our third phase. So the project has been working on those exchange formats for around 9 years now. And the perspective has evolved with time, if I may call it that, because the good practices are part of the peer learning. So basically we're kind of matchmakers between municipalities with good practices, with those who need those examples to solve their issues. So we have two approaches that we implement, which is topic-based and region-based. So we are working globally, as I mentioned before. So we have regional networks where the priorities of each region are analyzed from our team, from our side within our team, and then we create an offer to to conduct those peer learning options and formats. And then the mobilization takes place targeting the region, addressing this challenge, and then practitioners come together to exchange a moderated and facilitated format so that they can be supported in pinpointing the points and the questions they want to get answered. And then there is the other side, which is topic oriented. So we conducted two COVID response programs in the last 2 years, where we opened it up without any like specific regional restrictions, and then we addressed the priorities of needs to understand more about successful solutions, because those weren't the typical good practices, as they were quite new and quite, let's say, short-term. So those other kinds of experiences, exchange and peer learning, was what we more or less addressed on the go as the pandemic reached different regions in a different capacity. The problems were completely diverse. In some regions, it was like the digitalization issue. In other regions, was more sanitation and healthcare. Other regions was more logistics and mobility. So basically, we tried to be as flexible and adapting as possible. So yeah, it was a very wide range of, let's say, a learning process for our team as well, because we tried to introduce as many inclusive offers as possible. Yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell, but I'm here, of course, throughout the session. I'm glad to answer any questions or add on later.
Thank you very much, Fatna. And I want you also to stress that collective cities also, they have like a lot of interesting materials on peer learning methodologies. It would be great if we can also, not only during the session, but as Learning Forum, we can have a place to share. And we are thinking about this, a place that we can share the methodologies, the materials on the learning aspects, methodological aspects, for us to create this general culture of collective learning. So yes, Fatina, thanks. I'm seeing here, we have to pass to the second round, but I'm seeing here that also Salim from MEWA, also Marta from the Commission of Culture. I don't know if they want to also share, and very in 2 minutes, I don't know, Salim, Marta, could you, or I don't know who wants to be first, and someone else. We have more space for one more person, if for this session of this round of dialogue on methodologies specifically. Salim. Yeah.
Let me just add one thing on this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fernando.
Great.
Right after our Connective Cities colleagues spoke, we have been working with Connective Cities for some time on several issues actually. Like, I want to give 2 examples. One of the peer learning event we did with Connective Cities, one on waste management. It was with Turkish and German cities. Another one was on migration. So in 2 different, activities we did with Connective Cities. In one of them, it was like German cities providing more technical expertise to the Turkish ones, whereas in migration, Turkish cities were more active in terms of sharing their best practices with the German municipalities. So this kind of experience sharing was very useful. What we learned from this expertise is that reporting and follow-up is really very important. And the methodology of Connective Cities was very useful for us, because sometimes in our region, reporting and follow-up is always an issue. So with this expertise, it was much more beneficial. One more note, the VLR processes we started in our region was also very important for us. Cities in Europe were helping Turkish cities. So we identified the maybe most suitable ones from Europe, and we led Turkish cities to engage with them. It was very useful. And then the Turkish cities which prepared their VLRs in turn helped other Turkish cities to prepare their VLR. So it's like a chain reaction. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Before I saw that Pierre also raised his hand, but I don't just to say that I don't know if Marta wants to comment 2 minutes, and then Pierre, and then we go to the next round. Okay, can we go this way? And please use the chat too.
Yes, thank you, Fernando and team. Very quickly, I will speak about the Sedentary Program. It is one of the learning and capacity building programs of the UCLG Culture Committee. And well, as you may know, it is an on-site and in-person meeting that each city that wants to host a meeting organize in partnership also with UCLG sections. And they select participants from different policy areas, not only from the cultural area, but from other areas, since the aim of the workshop is to integrate the cultural dimension of the localization of the SDGs, and from different sectors as well, public, private, and academia. So we have one facilitator, which is appointed by the Cultural Committee and the UCLG section that is facilitating and organizing the workshop as well. And the meeting and the workshop has very clear steps that are all gathered in a learning toolkit that each participant receives at the beginning. And it is a one-day meeting, so this is perhaps one of the challenges, that it is an in-person meeting and long, but the reality is that at the conceptual level, there are some difficulties because it is a new approach to a difficult theme, the SDGs and the localization. So what is the cultural approach to this area? And also keeping interactivity high and enhancing all this knowledge transmission is also a challenge. And so we want to present this workshop from the inside in the Lejeune to see the way we can strengthen the methodology and the network that it is creating. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Yes, we'll continue on that. And just to, I forgot to mention that Fatima commented something on e-learning. We will have a third stock taking session on that on the July 5th. So this is the first one of the 3 sessions. So and then the other, as Sarah commented, on localizing on the 21st of June. So Pierre, please, if you can, like do a general comment and also close this first round of session, first round of debate. We go to the second one later. Thank you, Pierre, for being here.
Thank you, Fernando. And from my, I think, almost 10 years of working with UCLG, just a couple of thoughts that I learned from the dialogues and the learning processes that we have been working on together. The first thing, I think, which was already mentioned, is the importance of selecting participants which can bring some commonalities and some common experience. I think what was quite a big convergence for us is in the ILO, we had an agenda for South-South cooperation. And when we started working in cooperation with UCLG on learning and city-to-city cooperation, one of the big things which I learned, I have that memory from Maputo, when we started working on something which was markets and renovation of markets and social organizing around market, is having the experience of Durban, and I think it was Porto Alegre from Brazil, and the people who had come to the meeting, they were not academia, they were people from who had hand-on experience from the same problems and which were sharing their experience with the one in Maputo. So that's the first thing. I think that selection was very important of being able to bring this type of experience. The second one also, which was very nice illustration of that exchange and this capacity of exchange, was in Amazonia, where we had municipalities coming from 5 countries and coming together, and surely they had a lot of in common to share about how to go about green jobs, local economic development in that context. So that's part of the process, is very important. And the second thing I wanted to emphasize maybe was that time invested on sharing and identifying the problem is very connected to the look for the solutions. Is that I think we should not oppose one to the other. In the tradition of the ILO, of the social dialogue, if you don't have a common diagnosis, you won't have a common vision afterwards and a common roadmap or a common understanding of where to go. So the time spent on looking at the issues and making sure we understand each other on the issues, because sometimes we come and we say, well, we have that issue, but this is the same. And sometimes it is the same and sometimes it is not the same. And just, spelling that out that can be done in many ways with, of course, you can invite experts, but you can have also games and to identify the priorities. I think we've done a wonderful decision-making games. It was when we were in Sri Lanka, I think. Sarah has all that memories because she's very good at keeping memories and documenting that. But that time is very important. And when we go to solution and sharing solution, I think sometimes we overlook one question is the replicability or the scalability of the solutions. You know, everybody comes with his own good idea and so on, and but is it really replicable or not? And having that question in mind is a very good one also. Most of the time, and at the same time, sometimes also it's good to ask ourselves how can we scale up? I mean, okay, we've done something good, but not everything small is beautiful. There are also big stuff which can be nice and beautiful. So maybe those types of things. And just to finish, something which I think we need to work a little bit more on is that our solutions, our approach to problems are very much rooted into values and values and priorities. And being able in a safe space to say, well, when we did that, our priorities, what the values we wanted to embed were this one, I think it's also very helpful. Because otherwise, nothing is, you know, you cannot take one thing to the other. I mean, just because sometimes you want to put emphasis on solidarity, you want to put emphasis on preserving communities. I mean, there are different priorities, and it's important to be able to spell them out. Thank you.
Great comments, Pierre, as always. I believe we have a lot of, and you have also commented a little bit about what we are going to discuss on this second round, not only in methodologies, as you gave examples, and I think after we can also share some of the examples you mentioned, but also about how the peer learning is not only a methodology and a technical thing, right? We also have to think about the structuring and to think very well about the objective and the continuation of the process, right? And for the second round, I see there's a lot of people here. I see that EIP is here, the UNESCO Learning Cities too, but I see also a very interesting, all of you, Arnau, Paula, Pedro, Najada, I would like to hear all of you, but I don't know, I would suggest that EIP could start with the second round of dialogue about the impacts, how we can, and a lot of you you have already commented different aspects of it, how we can guarantee the impact of peer learning on local public policies, linking the technical and the political, and also a challenge that we all have, that is how to monitor the impact of peer learning after structuring the session, how we can follow up and monitor the impacts, and I don't know who from EIP could comment on that. Maybe Charlotte, I think you are, I see you there. Charlotte, if you can, that's great. Can you make a brief comment on that, on monitoring and the impacts?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. I've been following this. It's fascinating to hear because so much resonates with what we have found since we started this work with EIP a couple of years back already, in really trying to see how do we track and learn, how do we monitor evaluation and learning in P2P engagements. And I think why even doing that? It's very hard, right? I mean, usually when you have something you want to reach, and you just assume if you do peer-to-peer, you will get there. But then in between, what happens is usually a black box. So when you come in the end, you say, well, we'll see in the results if they are better, but you don't actually know it. It's very hard to attribute or see how the peer-to-peer component contributed to improvements in results. So that's what we've been busying ourselves with for the last couple of years. We've tried to harvest lessons on, specifically on the monitoring, evaluation, and learning component from EAP members, and try to then see some good practices. And I'd be happy to share more bilaterally or in the report. But one thing I think is that is super important is the idea of being very intentional about the monitoring, evaluation, and learning from the beginning, because it just doesn't happen on its own. If you start once you start with a problem, if you also have an intentional process of tracking and actually invest in that tracking as well, so that you know if you're actually getting there. You have maybe a theory of change or a problem that you want to solve, and you have an idea of how peer-to-peer learning alongside other learning methodologies will feed into that. But if we don't track it, we don't know if it's the right partner, if the mutuality is there, if the trust is there, all these variables that are so important for actually having peer-to-peer really contribute to that, to resolving that result. I think, Sarah, you said in the beginning that the most effective way with peer-to-peer, or your video said, the peer-to-peer can be one of the most effective ways institutions learn. And that is so very true, but it can also lead to frustrations if you end up in a bad partnership, right? Or if peer-to-peer learning is used just to take a trip or harvest good practices, but not actually really connecting it to the institutional practices back home. So some of the lessons are really around that, like connecting the problem, being very problem focused, first of all. Interesting again that the discussion was about whether it's problem focused or good practice based. Of course, there needs to be a combination of both, but I think what we've seen is that when people come with a very burning problem and really search and look for people to help them solve that problem, it's easier to find that good match, and it's also easier to give credit to the resource organization because there needs to be something in it for them as well. So if you track the process, you can also give credit and visualize and make visible and communicate with confidence the contribution of the sort of resource organization. So you don't just go and sort of grab things without attributing the resource organization and the knowledge that they contribute. So communication is important. If you track, you can also communicate. You start gathering evidence and you can regularly communicate, be transparent about what's happening in the process. You connect the problem specific to the systemic change that needs to be sort of happen, like who needs, so this is the problem, but even if we get the solution, what are the other systemic factors that play into this? Who needs to change? Who's involved? Do we have the right people involved? Who needs to change how in order for this solution to actually shift into a new institutional behavior? So we've been experimenting, and we've looked a lot at people who used very actors-based methodologies, outcome harvesting, quite open-ended, and try to connect it very much to people's motivation to change, motivation to learn, the opportunity they have, and what capabilities specifically you're trying to target and trying to sort of harvest and nurture internally, and to try to track those instead of just looking at, how what was the end result. And of course, so communication is one, transparency, accountability is another, while you do monitoring evaluation, and then of course learning, right? So that you actually get something out of this process. And I think, another thing I wanted to say also was another thing we have looked at and learned from is often what is being tracked currently is what's easy to track, right? It's number of events, sometimes it's user feedback, it's sometimes people who were involved on an individual basis, and of course their feedback on the process. But we need to, what the tricky part, I think, is to connect it, like get it up to that system level, to connect it from individual to collective, from individual to organizational system, from a number of individuals to maybe sector back to the organization. And also another factor that can come in and play a role is the legitimacy. Sometimes if you're stuck in your own environment, political or institutional or whatever it is, sometimes the validity or the legitimacy gained by teaming up with another organization can sort of, in a roundabout way, open that political space internally to actually start a change process. And those are some of the things that we can track if we're intentional about it and actually use those more open, process-oriented methodologies. I think that's all I want to say at this point.
Can I just add to that, Charlotte, Fernando, if I could? Just to add to that, one of the other key attributes that we've seen in the work that we've been doing at EIP is really the importance also of monitoring and tracking the health of the partnership. So if you're really wanting to ensure that there is mutuality and that there's trust and really a collaborative process, beyond just looking at the institutional change results, it's very important also to identify some measures by which you kind of assess the quality and health of the actual partnership itself. And that certainly doesn't need to be a one-directional thing. It's not just that one partner is trying to get something, but you want to make sure that, you know, everyone is somehow benefiting from this exchange and collaboration. And there are some different ways in which that can be done, but it's something that's often not thought about or overlooked in the process.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Charlotte. Well, I was just thinking during your comments there that, as Emilia said, that we are creating this forum for this collective learning, no? And then it would be great if we can continue all the discussions with you on specific aspects of peer learning. I believe we could have a great exchange and we could learn from each other a lot. It's very interesting to hear you. Sarah commented here that she would like to have also some practical examples of impact where change happens. And I also saw that Catherine was there from UNESCO Learning Cities. I don't know if you can comment a little bit on it. And I see that Arnau, Paola, Arjona, Najar also there, Emilio also there. Would like to see if you all can comment on that with practical examples and on impacts, and also commenting what Charlotte and Catherine started. So the floor is open. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fernando, please, no,
Great.
go ahead. Or
No,
Paola, whomever.
No, I was not seeing you, but now I see. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
We also have interpreters, so please feel free in any language.
Why? My English is not that good? Is that what you're saying?
Sure, now you are so perfect.
No.
But just
I just have some before trying to identify an example, because there's many examples. There's a couple of general reflections that somehow can set the context, and I think some ideas have been mentioned already. Catherine and Charlotte, I think it was Catherine in this very last point, was mentioning the need to connect the individual with the collective, or the individual with the institutional. Try to identify how institutions learn, okay? Because if one person that is not a key player in the institution, or that moves around, or that is not peer learning, that is not institutional organizational learning, or it's much more difficult. And I know that you're familiar with that, because we've experienced how our political representative change. So we have to convince them again that this is useful and that it makes sense. So we do have to teach them or help them learning. But apart from that, and here's the general reflection I want to make, it's something that in order to learn, we need some context. We need to identify our priorities, our goals. Why do we need that actually requires to be humble. We must be humble. We have to accept that some knowledge can be used at home. So being humble is very important, and that humility is required for individuals, and for organizations or local governments. We have to accept humbly that we can learn from others, and not so much on the methodology, but about the impact. This context requires time, money, and power. You, Sarah, from this learning dimension, this learning bubble that you have at UCLG, I know that you have I know that you're connected with reality, but you live in the learning bubble. People in the academia sometimes live in the learning bubble. But do institutions have time to learn? Do they provide their civil servants with time? Is there money to learn? Because that's expensive sometimes. And without that, we cannot learn, or we cannot learn easily, especially if think about a person or about an animal or about an institution, organization, a political representative. If he or she is worried about survival, he or she is running, is not learning. That is something that at the university I've experienced during the pandemic. Some people were afraid of the consequences. Some people had the means, like computers, good internet connections, and some people did not have that context. So I think that context is very important to identify and try to reach some impacts, because the impacts again are very much needed. And sometimes if we do not have the impacts, if we do not identify those impacts, we cannot sell the idea of learning. And as of there, I have some other ideas, but I don't want to take too much time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arnau. You have made a lot of good points there, and well, I wish we would have more time to discuss them, all of it, point by point. I don't know if someone else want to comment on what Arnau just raised here, or others, or other comments. I don't know. But Arnau, if you can, Najad and Cristina also, and Pedro also raised their hand. Arnau, it would be great if we can continue with all these questions. I believe they're very difficult to answer, but provoking you here. I don't know, Najad has raised her hand, and please feel free to also comment on the chat too.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Hello, Sarah. Hello, learning community. It's really a good moment of exchange to better enhance our methodology, and peer learning is among this methodology. All of us, we are doing peer learning, but sometimes it's not well structured, as it was said since we began this exchange. And I have a proposal to Sarah and maybe to UCLG as a global organization, is to help us, all the regional section, to put in place some standards and prerequisites in the form of a toolkit when we talk about peer learning, what is about, before, during the peer learning, and the takeaway, what we have as impact when we are doing peer learning. And there is also some confusion. We're talking about peer learning or peer review. So sometimes there is this confusion. We need to clarify also the concepts. So I will be very, very happy and glad if our global organization help us to put in place this toolkit, some guidance when we want to do peer learning. What is the meaning? What is the goal? What we are supposed to do to prepare the peer learning in terms of the target groups, the context, the budget needed, the appropriate moment. Sometimes we are inviting elected officials and mayors where they have their ordinary sessions. We cannot mobilize them. So this is some elements we have to keep in mind before doing peer learning. And after, when we decide to do it, there is some scientific aspects and also some logistical aspects. And I appreciate really the video presented by Sarah, and if we can have it and have it also in other language to share it with our community and the partners. And for the takeaway, the impact, for example, can be the promotion of decentralized cooperation. Sometimes when we gather mayors and they exchange, they can put in place initiative on decentralized cooperation. We need to report, to document, to have an appropriate list of participants with all the contacts. So this is my proposal from UCLG Africa, is maybe for Daejeon to come with the toolkit on peer learning for our community and our networks. It will help, and then we can adapt this toolkit to each regional section. Thank you very much.
Great idea, Najat. And I think it's one of the objectives of this learning forum too, that we hear you, but we also have this space for us to think of common materials that we can produce, not only the UCLG Learning World Secretariat, but we together as a learning forum community. So you're having great ideas there, and we have a lot of people here that can contribute and can produce with us together materials on that, specific guides, specific manuals, I don't know, that can be useful for everyone. So yes, that's one of the things that this forum can try to do, is to like guarantee this horizontal also production of materials, not only sharing the challenges, but also trying to answer them collectively. So we have this time issue here. We have more 11 minutes, and then we have less questions about the road to Daejeon, how we can think collectively about the peer learning aspect of the Congress in Daejeon, that we can like think together. So, but I see that Fatima and Christina also raised their hands. So I will ask you just to brief comment on 1 minute, and then we go to the next round of questions. Thank you. Thank you, Najat. Please, Fatima, and then Christina.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I also want to add my voice to for my colleagues here, as I do consider this as also a peer learning experience, right? Because we are working on a similar level. What I want to emphasize here, that we need to direct these mechanisms in both directions, meaning that it is also needed towards our teams, right? So it is also needed not just in the direction of the beneficiaries, but I do believe that it is relevant to our teams as well, as at the moment we're still mostly working virtually. So we witnessed a different kind of exposure, a different kind of accessibility. The point that was mentioned by Arnaud, if the participants have the needed infrastructure, have the needed tools, then they can access this. On the other hand, you have a different kind of involvement if it's on-site. But at the moment, from our side at least, we do think that a hybrid or like the blended learning formats might be the way to go in the future, so that we would offer both, as the logistics of preparing a virtual a peer learning structure is completely different than having it on site. So maybe there would be like within the proposed like idea to have a shared toolkit or a guideline or whatever, that we would differentiate between the different setups that are possible. Yeah, that's it in a very short reaction to what was said. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Fatima. Yeah, that's great. We have to continue. Christina, and then Patricia. Maybe I will ask you for the next round, if we can. If it's not specific on this about impacts, we can go with you for the next round. So, Christina, please, 1 minute.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. It was really interesting to hear all the insights, also especially the comment by Arnaud. I think that was so, yeah, very, very valuable. I'm representing the Global Network of Learning Cities. We have more than 200 cities really advancing lifelong learning opportunities. We're also learning lifelong and appreciating this forum with you. I just wanted to give one example. Last year, we had our international conference on learning cities with an outcome document. The context, I mean, the importance is also the context, and that was due to the pandemic. So the topic of our conference was resilient and healthy cities through lifelong learning. And what we're now doing, and maybe I'm just mentioning it because tomorrow it's the start of a webinar series. We are enacting the outcome document. We are trying to follow up with the UNESCO chair on global health education, what is actually happening in our cities. I mean, after having adopted the document, so what's next? What are the cities doing? With that webinar series, we are again raising awareness. We are sharing best practices. We have invited our mayors from the network, from different regions. And it's really, I mean, also, yes, delivering a roadmap with practical tips on how to enact, how to implement local policies and really put them into action. So I just wanted to mention that and share this with this forum here. Yes, so you're all invited tomorrow at 1 o'clock Hamburg time, German time, to join the webinar. If you're interested, please follow.
Thank you, Christina, very much. And if you can share the link for the event on the chat, it would be great. And I don't know, Patricia, can you comment now? Yeah, can you comment now? And then we pass you the, yeah, just a minute.
No, it's okay. I can wait if you want.
Okay, so we pass to the next round, which is our way to Daejeon. So here we want to hear you and to think about this collective learning, specifically on peer learning. We will have the other sessions on localizing and e-learning, but how we can, and considering the great inputs that we had until now, how we can think our session in Daejeon that will a little bit think about the next 3 years of UCLG learning, and specifically on peer learning too. What would be the important points to think about on methodologies, on impact, on monitoring, on producing learning, specifically materials. So we can open with Patricia, and then we have more 5 minutes. So Patricia, if you can just in 1 minute, and we go in with short inputs about the brainstorming on the peer learning on the Congress. Please go ahead, Patricia. Thank you very much for being here too.
Okay, if you don't care, I will speak Spanish.
Sure. Buenísimo.
Ok. Bueno, en principio lo que iba a decir antes y que tiene que ver con todo esto es que sin duda, bueno, cada uno de los puntos tratados está muy vinculados, digamos, desde, digamos, la metodología es central para poder pensar después qué impacto va a tener esa capacitación. Nosotros hemos tenido una experiencia muy interesante desde la Comisión de Planificación Urbana Estratégica de CGLU con e-learning a fines del año pasado, un Trainer for Trainers que trabajamos en relación a temas de resiliencia, y un poco retomando algunas cosas que fueron diciendo varios, sin duda la posibilidad de trabajar juntos guías
no específicas, sino que los contenidos fueran próximos a esta capacitación, a este trabajo que se realizó para una región, en este caso que era América Latina, sin duda facilitó el acercamiento y la apropiación, digamos, de los contenidos. Me parece que también hay una cuestión que tiene que ver que la posibilidad de un impacto y una continuidad en el trabajo tiene que ver con, esto es como en la participación, yo trabajo desde la Ciudad de Buenos Aires y en la gestión lo vemos también, es en qué momento involucramos a los que luego van a ser sujetos, digamos, de esa capacitación, de ese trabajo. Cuanto antes los involucramos, más posibilidades hay de que ese impacto sea real, digamos. O sea, si nosotros los involucramos ya desde pensar juntos cuáles son los temas prioritarios que nos interesan, cuáles son los puntos de interés sobre los que queremos trabajar, es más, y que además, como dijeron algunos, durante la actividad les demos un espacio, una proporción de participación, que no tenga que ver solo con la escucha, o con el comentar o reaccionar, sino que se apropien de generar, digamos, a partir de los contenidos que les facilitamos, sus propias experiencias, que sean ya parte de la capacitación, seguramente esa apropiación va a haber mayor motivación a multiplicar esa experiencia y a trabajarlo a posteriori. Planteo dos desafíos que probablemente se puedan pensar para Dayton también. Una tiene que ver con que nos está pasando a nivel local. Probablemente ustedes están, bueno, en etapas diferentes de a cómo se ha venido desarrollando la pandemia de acuerdo a la región, a la etapa en que estamos nosotros. Nosotros estamos recién ahora entrando en la presencialidad, y bueno, y es un desafío fuerte, no es lo mismo el espacio de Zoom, el espacio a distancia, en el que uno puede optar o no por participar, y es más sencillo aparentemente ser parte, que cuando uno los quiere involucrar estando en ese lugar y siendo parte, digamos. Esto, bueno, produce retracciones, produce ausencias, no es el mismo alcance, digamos, me parece que es una de las cuestiones. Y bueno, básicamente, ¿cómo acompañamos? Otro tema que tal vez, bueno, por lo menos también en esta región es muy común, que es la continua circulación de personal, tanto a nivel, en los estamentos, obviamente en los políticos, pero también en los técnicos. Hay mucha movilidad, muchos cambios, entonces a veces nosotros capacitamos, trabajamos con un sector, y luego ese grupo, no sé, un año después tal vez ya no es parte del equipo de gobierno de cada ciudad. Entonces, bueno, estas son algunas cuestiones que quería agregar como desafíos, como cuestiones para sumar a la charla.
Buenísimo, Patricia. Bueno, con la experiencia de Buenos Aires y del Comité, ¿no?, de Planificación Estratégica, podemos observar que, bueno, hay muchos desafíos ahí que pensar, ¿no? Pero eso también del cambio de los gobiernos, cómo garantizar la continuidad, ¿no?, de las políticas de aprendizaje y el impacto también. Bueno, entonces, me gustaría también comentar que sería buenísimo también para las próximas sesiones de e-learning, por ejemplo, ¿no? También pensar cómo pensamos este futuro del peer learning, ¿no? Pero del aprendizaje en general, ¿no? Cómo hacer, por ejemplo, un peer learning, un intercambio más técnico, ¿no? En línea, ¿no? Cómo utilizar teléfonos, ¿no? No sé. Pero pensar un poco en eso, ¿no? Porque es posible o no, o cómo hacer una cosa mezclando, ¿no?, tecnologías, pero eso podemos discutir más tarde, y durante esta sesión específica de e-learning, ¿no?, de aprendizaje en línea. Teóricamente ya terminamos. Si alguien quiere más comentar acerca del camino al Daejeon, yo pienso que como siempre decimos, es un inicio, ¿no? Es una provocación, y para que nosotros continuemos juntos así y discutiendo. Entonces, nos ofrecemos así como mediadores, ¿no?, para reunir a todos, pero la idea es que continuemos por acá. Si alguien tiene algún otro comentario muy rápido, por favor, levantar la mano. ou se não, passamos para o comentário final de Sara. Abierto. Algum comentário mais? Pedro, que bom te ver aqui, meu querido. Então, please go ahead, Pedro. Just 1 minute, and
okay,
then.
Just 1 minute. Then can I do it in Portuguese?
I don't know. Maybe we see with the interpreters. No. Bueno. So, Pedro.
Okay, let me try it in
Perfecto.
English. Very briefly. So I just want to stress a thing that were mentioned here was about political buying. I think it's very important that at the political level they buy this idea. But there is the other thing of the peer learning, because what we saw in Mozambique that one political leader chose a program to the land, but when they changed, the other political didn't follow that line. So it's important to have this compromise on the politicians. But the other thing is that on changing government, changing politicians, so how this process continues, who follow it. So we think the local association like ANAM, like UCLG, they are the ones who bring this all the knowledge. So how we support these associations, these entities, to let's say to be the guardians of this knowledge and continues to this process. So this was just little things I would like to stress. Thank you, Fernando. Yeah.
Thank you, Pedro. Yes, that's right. We can see that in the process of cooperation of Brazilian and Mozambican cities, how important was the involvement of associations, Jesse that was here, but as Arnau and others, Patricia commented on this importance of, and Emilia also, and Sarah, the importance of this collective learning and the participation of different stakeholders to guarantee the continuation. So Sarah, if there's no one else, Sarah, we are with you for the conclusion. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here and I learned a lot with you today. I hope we can continue with that. So please go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Fernando, for that very good moderation. You have guided us on time and very, very rich and open in inputs. Fernando always insists on free, open mind. Let's not put people in the cage. Open discussion is relevant, and you will, I think, for a virtual meeting, this was really a very nice to have so many voices from you, so many practices, and also speaking to each other. So I think we have got the main points, the peer learning itself, of course, methodology rich, the operational challenge around it, also the different actors, associations, networks, or cities. So that was a very nice illustration. We would also maybe today we could not see so much the observatories, but probably we should please all of you who have observatories where local practices are stored, share them. So because this is another challenge we have, just not to double information, but to combine and have transparency. So that's why in learning we are very, very happy that so much is going on in with our different members. Of course, there are big challenges ahead, and I think that also came up and now definitely made very provocative inputs to this. We are, and I think it's very true that the bubble, we always, everybody creates a bubble, and of course, beyond our bubbles need to be explored bubble. And for coming to this explosion, we need to be strong in order not to be washed away. And that's probably the challenge for the long term. So all of us, we hope that some of you feel inside the bubble. And of course, then we can explode the bubble together and give us strength mutually to conquer mainly academic sector. This is a big final point. I think if we are talking about learning, we talk about education, and what we see when we start working with university, that we really live in different worlds, and there is a lot to do in the future, and we cannot learning is humble. I think we are humble, as you say. That's why we also do not say training. We have a really you will see in localizing, we are humble to go to scale and have recipes. But of course, all this methodology goes somewhere, and we really work for more connection, so that we have youth that is educated, that we have institutions that permanently invest in learning, that update, and we could put our piece of grain into these bigger mills that need to the institution, and in particular public government. We always are reminded by Najat, there is so much to do to make them, to prepare them well. So I think it was very, very interesting, and also, of course, the points of Patricia are very reflective and bring us to this other scale. Where are we going, where our cities are going, where's the future going? And of course, I think we got a lot of inputs from your side that the hybrid era we are in, because virtual a little bit is already over, brings a lot of challenges. So we hope that together we can address this. And maybe for Najat, for your toolkit point, it is already there. We have already videos on peer reviews, and also how to present your cases. So there are elements, and maybe what we should do is communicate them a little bit better, but not only what we do at the World Secretariat. We need to, we can collect all what you are doing, because there is just so much that we have to celebrate and look to this pack of opportunities more constantly, and this will happen in Daejeon. I'm sure not only the Learning Forum that will have a full half day, but also all your sessions will be full of this spirit. So thank you very, very, very much joining us, and so nice to see you all in good health, in good shape, and with full of energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you, interpreters too.
Muy bien. Gracias por venir. Merci pour rester avec nous. Our first pilot of the Learning Forum.